So I'll hit record here. All right. So welcome, Derrick. This isn't an official podcast. This is just for my Patreon folks, but everyone needs to check out Derrick Day. You're going to want to pay attention to him. So the deal of this little shindig that I do is called Shootin' the Shit with whoever the guest is, and that's you today.
I learned it.
Yeah, it's fun. You know, I did Keith came on, Katie Valentine came on, and now you're the third. And I didn't think we would just be able to shoot the shit today because I wanted to give space for you, a black man, to talk about what the fuck is going on right now, because I think people need to listen.
Dude, I'm at a point. I'm at really a crossroads, emotionally. Because on the one hand, it's another black man killed by cops. And I'm like, how much of this do we have to endure? It's like every time you look, there's something like this happening. And I have 5 sons, and they range in age from 26 to 14. Okay. And that means like 3 of them are fully adults, by the law. And then I have 2 teenagers, and 1 is about to start driving. And so every time these guys go out and they go somewhere, they want to do something, in addition to giving them the talk that normal white parents have to give their kids, like, hey, don't do drugs,
right.
don't have sex,
Right.
all of these different things. I have to tell my kids, look, don't fucking die.
Yeah.
And what's sad is that it took getting to Ahmaud Arbery for people to wake up and see, okay, there is a problem. And so prior to this, it's like with Philando Castile and Sandra Bland and some others, there was no traction. I was beating this drum and nobody would, they're like, oh, and listen, this is the thing. I'm going to say this, and some people may get mad, but there were people like from the quote unquote Grace Camp, man, and they were telling me, oh, Derrick, don't rant and rave about this police brutality thing. Just pray. Just ask, just leave it in Jesus's hands. And I'm like, okay. And so I went through a season where I didn't say anything. And then something happens again. And I'm like, okay, here I am again. And I gotta say something. Because silence is complicity. Silence is saying, I agree with it. Silence is saying, there's nothing wrong, right?
Yeah.
So this whole thoughts and prayer shit, man, that it's time out for that. But back to my original thing. I'm tired of telling my kids, listen, man, just, don't die. Yeah. One time I let my oldest son drive my car. He went out on a date, and so my car is a great date car. You got
a nice ride. You got a nice ride, right?
So he takes it out and he's he and his lady friend riding with the top down, and he calls me. He says, "Hey, Dad, the cops are following me." And so I said, stay cool, and just just be measured in all of your approaches and all of that. Just don't do anything, and stay on the phone with me until you either get pulled over or until he leaves. So I'm on the phone with him, and the whole time my heart is racing because I'm like, is this going to turn out well, or is my kid going to become another fucking statistic? That's what I have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. And with this whole pandemic thing going on, you have an additional layer of complexity laid on this, because you got people that are all pent up and uptight about what else is going on in the world, in addition to their own, prejudices and that kind of thing. So it's a tough time. It's not a good time to be black in America, Matthew.
No, it doesn't seem like it is. And that conversation, it's got to be hard. I have one daughter, and so I have different conversations, obviously. And having a daughter, I'm sure it can be difficult in itself. for different reasons, because women have faced a lot in this country too. But having five black sons, I mean, I can only speculate on what that's like, right?
Yeah.
And so it makes me think,
No.
like, when people are, the riots that are going on, and the we'll call them less than peaceful protests, a lot of people
Yep.
are getting upset about that too. They're like, oh, you're not going to accomplish anything about that. But maybe, can you talk about that? Because it does seem like, on the one hand, there's different approaches to how to protest. But to me, it's like, you know what? Like, maybe if you're not black, you should probably not be very quick to judge about any of this right now,
Yep.
because people are going to be pissed off about this shit, because after a while, like, nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens, nothing happens. Like fucking people are going to be pissed.
Yeah. And it's funny, people come to me and they say, well, Derrick, why can't everybody just protest like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.? And I said, and when they say that, I say, that's a really great question, because when Dr. King was alive, he wasn't a hero. He wasn't an American hero. He was a terrorist. He was a rabble rouser. He was, he was unpatriotic.
Right.
This is what he was. So his protest then, which we look back at through the lens of today, we look back and we say, okay, they were peaceful protests and all of that. But when he was alive, it wasn't looked upon that way. So, and he said something toward the time he was assassinated. And he said this, and it was a powerful statement. He said, riots are the language of the unheard.
Mm.
In other words, when people get to the point where enough is enough, it begins to bubble up into violence.
Yeah.
And what people don't realize is that the whole concept of what we call America is built upon this self-same violent principle. That when the colonists were fed up with taxation without representation, when they were fed up with British intervention in their financial affairs, when they were fed up with British soldiers quartering on their property, then it was time, in the eyes of the framers of the Constitution, to take up arms against Great Britain. And so basically, the American Revolution is one big fucking riot.
Right.
And it's one that yielded probably the greatest result in the history of riots.
Right.
So when you say, well, riots are unproductive, and listen, let me say this for the record, I'm opposed to violence of any kind.
Yeah.
Now, this is from a guy who served in the military. This is from a guy who's been a bodyguard and a bouncer. This is a guy who studied martial arts and has been a boxer all of his life. This is me. But I'm opposed to violence because I've learned that violence is not consistent with love. But everybody has the need to be loved. And if they feel like they're not loved, if people go long enough without feeling loved, this is going to escalate into something that manifests physically. Yeah. And that's where we are. You can't just keep having people who are sworn to protect and to serve killing an entire segment of the population on a regular basis, and for people to just kind of sit by and say, well, kumbaya, my lord. It's everything is going to be okay. Wait till the sweet by and by. Jesus is going to crack the sky and he's going to swing low his sweet chariot and carry us on home. And that is absolute bullshit. And let me say this. Well, I'm going to stop here because I see you look like you have a question or a comment, and I want to make sure that that I'm not hogging the space.
Oh no, this is your space, man. I'm just here listening. No, I think on the one hand you can have that sort of like hopeful view, but on the other, like it's not mutually exclusive. Like you can get fucking pissed off and demand justice for the injustices. You can demand equality, you can demand the walls of structural violence to come down and still be hopeful. So it's, I just, the thought kicked in my head when you're saying that yeah, folks can have that view, but still you have every right and you're entitled to be like, no, fuck this shit.
But dude, this is the part that gives me hope, is that, you know, for the first time, man, in my lifetime, I'm seeing a lot of white people that are really disgusted with this. You know, I've seen you and things that you've said on social media, and Katie and Keith and Todd and all of these people, and they are like outraged, and they're like, Derrick, I grieve with you, Derrick, I stand with you. You know, not just me, but others. You know, like Kyle Butler. It's like people are standing with us and saying, hey, we're here for you. And not only are we just here for you, but we're going to put our social capital at risk to help bring about this change that is needed for people that look like you, because we love you. And that right now, I was saying that I'm at a crossroads. I'm at a crossroads between despair and hope.
Yeah.
And I'm really waiting to see which way this is going to turn, because if this gets enough traction, then perhaps the work of the civil rights movement can actually be finished. Because you know that when the civil rights movement was going on, and for the longest time, it was just a bunch of belligerent Negroes in the eyes of most Americans. But what happened was Bloody Sunday, Selma, Alabama, 1965, you get John Lewis and a bunch of people that they decide they're going to cross this Edmund Pettus Bridge outside of Selma, Alabama. Now, there had been marches before, there had been protests before, but this particular time, the major media, CBS News, was on the scene to video this thing as it happened. And what happened was totally predictable. The marchers marched. The state police sicked their dogs and their fire hoses on the marchers. There were riot batons and billy clubs and punches thrown, and people were beaten and battered and bruised. And everything happened as if by script. But the thing was is that this particular time, CBS News caught this shit in real time. And they cut into major programming to show what was going on. So here's what happened. You know, you have white people that say, like, Seattle. They know that the South is fucked up at this time. They know this, right? But it's like, well, you know, I kind of know, but I don't want to know, or I don't really know the details. I don't know all the nuances. But this time, it was in everybody's face. And you know what happened? White people by the millions they flooded the switchboard of the Capitol, they flooded the switchboard of the White House, they flooded the switchboards of governor's offices and state legislatures and local governments. And here's the truth, that when they started calling the Capitol and the White House, they broke the switchboards for both of those buildings. The call volume was so high because people were outraged. And in order for this to change, we need that same level of outrage. And right now, this is the first fraction of it that I've seen in my lifetime. I mean, because I've seen things happen to Black folks all my life. But this time, with George Floyd, people are speaking out.
Yeah.
And, you know, it gives me hope, man. It gives me life, because I had reached a point where I was like, you know, okay, with Trump in office and all of that, and I'm going to lay some shit at his doorstep, because what he's done is he's made racism fashionable. You know, it used to be one of these things that was like, you know, if you smoke crack, but you have a good job, Well, you smoke crack kind of silently in the shadows so that nobody sees you. But, you know, you smoke crack, so all of the stuff that kind of goes along with a crackhead is in your wheelhouse. And that's how racism was. Racism was like forced into the shadows, and people just didn't talk about it. They tried to, try to be functional, but now it's like, hey, the president says, get that son of a bitch out of here, and and that kind of language, and then speaks the language of very fine people about white supremacists, and all of a sudden, hey, they're like, hey, I don't have to wear my sheet anymore.
Yeah.
I can just be upfront about the whole thing.
Yeah.
And but again, what's happening now is giving me hope because of people like you.
Well, yeah, I mean, it brings me to a thought. Like you mentioned white folks. How do white folks best help in this way? Because you don't want to get into the trap of like this white knight savior coming in to swoop to save black folks, and now we actually get the ones that we get to pat ourselves on the back because we help black folks. And I mean, we do it not just with black folks, we do it with everyone, right? This is kind of that's why there's this white knight syndrome. So how do white folks help in a better way and maybe facilitate, maybe whatever? I mean, what's the best way? I mean, I know there's not just one way.
I mean, there are many ways as the day is long, because there are some people that are very vocal and they don't mind speaking publicly or speaking to selected people in their sphere of influence. There are people that are like that, and then there are some people that are not very talkative. You have the introverts and all of that, and so not everybody's cut out to bang the drum. And I've said, I'm not asking people to lock arms with me and march down Pennsylvania Avenue and things like that. That's not my ask. My ask is that if you see it happen, I mean, and listen, I don't care what religion or whatever you are, everybody has a moral compass. Everybody. And so if you look at something and you say, man, that's fucked up, then say something. Speak out to the authorities. I mean, you could start by raising it with the local governments and state governments of the place where the incident happened. Which in this particular case, we're talking about Minneapolis. Okay, so you could flood the mayor's office, and you could flood city council's office. You could flood them with email, flood them with phone calls, flood them with letters. You can do all of these things. That's one thing. The other thing is, and this is the hard part, I think that people, they like to say, well, I like for me, I say this all the time, most of my friends are white. And that's, a lot of that has to do with where I live. It has to do with my professional connections, all of these different things, interests and all of that. But the people who I'm friends with, and I mean really friends with, I'm able to have really deep discussions. See, the problem is that we'll say, oh, well, I have black friends, so I'm not a racist. Well, that may not necessarily be true, because if your black association is simply someone who you have superficial conversation with about sports, about cars, or about the hot chick down the hall or whatever, that's not really meaningful conversation. But if you could say, man, some of these things that are happening in society that black people are dealing with, this is some tough stuff. And when you're able to have these conversations, and again, this is what's really, man, I wish you could see my inbox, because for the first time, it's like my inbox is something really positive. People are reaching out to me and they're saying, hey, Derrick, how can I help? Hey, Derrick, how can I lend my voice to this? What can I do? How can I help? And it's legitimate. It's not like you were saying, the white knight syndrome, where the white lawman comes in on his high horse, and no, it's not that sort of thing. I mean, it's literally people who are legitimately concerned, have legitimate empathy and compassion, and they're stepping up and saying, what can I do? So that's one thing. That's a couple of things. One is like, communication. You see it happen, communicate with the powers that be. Don't just sit there and expect that somebody else is going to solve it. If you see shit happen, report shit. Simple. The second thing is sit down and break bread with folks. Man, we had a little shindig. I want to say it's about 2 years ago now, where it was like myself and Aaron Abkey and George Kenworthy and Josh Greason and a bunch of us. We had met up at Patrick Summers' house up in Reading. Mm-hmm. And
you're in my neck of the woods, man.
What's that?
You're right. That's my neck of the woods. That's only an hour from me.
Man, I wish I'd known.
I know, right?
But we have this crazy shindig where we were sitting up. We were talking about God. We were talking about politics. We're talking about race. Not superficial conversations. We were having some conversations that some people, you could look at them, they were uncomfortable in having these discussions. But the conversations were had. Yeah. And when you do that, when you break bread with people and you really ask them, like most of my professional colleagues are Indian and they're Hindu. And, but we, after work, when we're consulting, we're on site or whatever, or pitching to a customer or whatever, we go out and we have dinner. And when we have dinner, I sit and I listen. I'm a talkative guy. Everybody knows me, knows I can talk. But I'll sit and listen because I really want to understand. I want to understand what it is, for a guy that grows up in Tagulu or Upper Pradesh or Prakesh rather, and I want to understand. I want to understand what the Indian experience in India is like, because if I understand that, I'll understand how what their MO, what their operation, what their way of thinking is here in the States, right? Mm-hmm. So it's important to me to not just have diversity in my friendships, but also have diversity in the approaches to conversation that I have with my diverse body of friends. Because that way we crack the ice of difficult subjects. That's like I have one Indian friend, and he told, we were talking about, I was talking about how minorities are perceived in America. And dude folded his arms. Now, this is one of my best friends in life. I'm not kidding you. But he folded his arms and he said, I'm not a fucking minority. Now that's his view. Yeah. But if he went out and robbed the 7-Eleven, he'd find out what a minority he is. Yeah. You see? But what I'm saying is that I said something that was uncomfortable to him. He did something that was uncomfortable to me, but we continued to plow through this conversation and discuss what our concerns were. And when we left, we mostly agreed, and on the things that we disagreed on, well, we've known each other almost 20 years. Why sacrifice friendship on the altar of some bullshit?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right on the macro level, or micro level. Those all seem great. It makes me wonder though how things can change for the long haul and the systemic level, and does it come down to police reform, criminal justice reform? Does there need to be new trainings? Because some of this shit that I hear is like, oh well, the officer felt threatened, or like his life, he was worried about his life, and he's scared, so he killed this person. But from the military friends that I've talked to, like, you can't even do that in war. You can't.
No,
like you can't. This shit, you get court-martialed, man. You that's not an excuse for anything.
That's right.
So a lot of it to me seems like, yeah, we change on the individual level. We start listening to people, not talking so goddamn much, being empathetic towards Black folks, brown folks, whatever. Yeah. And then, but on the macro, it seems like we have to change policing. And
you know what?
I mean, it's got to be a peace officer. It's got to be a protect and serve. Don't give me this bullshit.
Here's the deal. I posted something just maybe even not even an hour ago, on Facebook because I said, listen, you guys need to have a history lesson. And I'm going to say something here that's going to piss a whole lot of people off. It's going to be highly controversial, and I really don't give a fuck. It's this, that there may be police officers that are not racist. And I'll give you that because I have some of my best friends, some of my oldest friends. I have 3 friends that are retired police officers, and they are some of my best friends in life. I have one friend, he's, I don't know if he's a common Facebook friend of ours. Michael Porter is another one. Michael's a retired police officer, and Michael's white, and he's from North Carolina, you know, and he's as, you know, he's as Southern as you get. But dude is like really special in how he, you know, how he views people. So let me say this. All cops are not racist. All cops are not racist.
But I feel like there's a but coming.
Here it comes. Here it comes. Here it comes. All police departments are racist. 100% of them. And I'm going to tell you why. Because modern policing traces its roots back to slave trackers. That's where modern policing, because before the slave trackers, you didn't have federated groups of law enforcement officers. Typically, you had a local sheriff, and then you had deputies, and that was that.
Yeah.
But the slave traders, they had got very efficient in their job, very efficient in their investigation, very efficient in forensics, very efficient in tracking, very efficient in all of these things. And that was the birth of modern policing. So since modern policing traces its roots back to an apparatus designed to capture runaway slaves, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Yeah.
And so especially the major city police departments, New York City, Chicago, Philadelphia, Detroit, Atlanta, Los Angeles, you name it, that part of their unspoken charter is controlling their Negro populations. And so the best way of controlling people, as we have learned through our deconstruction of religion, the best way to control people is through fear.
Yeah.
The stick always works better than the carrot.
Yeah.
100% of the time. So if these police departments can instill fear in Black communities, and also here's the other thing too, is that, you know, the whole thing about sin management. You know, if you harp on sin, and you're always trying to manage sin, what you're going to get is more sin.
Right.
If you're always, you know, trying to find the speck in someone else's eye, the beam is growing in yours. You know, you're looking, you're worried about someone else lusting after a woman, but you get a pornography addiction. You know, so what happens is when external police pressure is applied, then the reaction is that somebody is going to try to outsmart it. And that's where you get criminal activity. And then also you have nature abhors a vacuum. So in places like Detroit, they used to have really robust economies, and you could even not have a high school diploma and have a job that you could take care of your family with. And then all of a sudden that's gone. So then you have people that, hey, they understand supply and demand. They understand incentivized economics. So what they do is they go in and say, hey, here's some drugs. Go sell these drugs. Because they know that they don't have any other hope for, you know, any other economic hope. So go sell these drugs. And so with police pressure, the people who are selling drugs, they're always trying to stay a step ahead. And so you get this really efficient game of cat and mouse. And that's where a lot of the crime comes from. See, it's like a friend of mine who's one of my mentors, My confession is I used to be a Republican. I used to be a rabid Republican. I used to say I used to have a radio talk show in Norfolk, Virginia for
Oh,
almost
wow.
4 years. And I used to always my little bumper was, the black man who's to the right of Rush Limbaugh.
That's
That
awesome.
was my thing.
I'm trying to hold on. Oh, there's your video. All right.
Hang on just a second. Let me do something real quick.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. And action.
And
All
we're
right.
back.
So, so basically, when people talk about black on black crime, well, first of all, black on black crime is no more of a thing than white on white crime or Korean on Korean crime or Chinese on Chinese crime.
Right.
It basically, this is the way homicide works out.
Yeah.
I'm generally not going. I'm not going to kill you, Matt. Why? Because you're a white guy. You're pretty much outside of my sphere of homicidal intent. Now, chances are, if I'm going to kill somebody, I'm going to kill another black dude. Why? Because I'm black. That's what we do. Same thing. If you're a white guy, chances are you're not going to kill you're not going to kill a black guy. You're going to kill another white guy. That's just statistics,
Yeah.
right?
Well, and not to mention, like, I can name, like, there's a town by me, Oroville, that had the same sort of thing. They built a big dam there. Then the economy crashed. It's all white folks pretty much. And there's a lot of crime and a lot of drugs. It's not the color of our skin that, like, oh, there's all these black folks killing black folks. We need to focus on that. It's like, no, when a group is oppressed for long enough in certain socioeconomic situations, bad shit's going to go down. I don't care what color you are. I don't care what religion you are.
People will get pissed. And part of the reason is like part of the Trump phenomenon is this, that like there are white folks like in places like Wheeling, West Virginia, that have lost their jobs. They don't have any hope. Drugs, crime, prostitution, all this stuff is running rampant, right? And somebody comes in, an outsider comes in and says, man, you know what your problem is, why you're going through all of this, it is because there's a nigger in the White House. And people say, oh yeah, I'm once upon a time being white meant something, and then the wheels start turning. And I'm not saying, I mean, that's what happens. And people buy into this, and when they buy into this, that's when all this stuff goes sideways. People at their root, they want to be loved, they want to be at peace, and they want to have opportunity. Those are three things that are like air, food, and water that are essential. Yeah. People want these things. And when they feel like they're not getting them, eventually the social fabric comes together in a sort of critical mass. And so that's when you get riots. These people say, well, black people just like to riot. No, it's not. No. Number one, if you've been oppressed for long enough, you'll say, okay, I'm just not going to take this shit anymore. Right. That's number one. And then number two is, it's like, yeah, there are always going to be some, dickheads that want to go in and rob the Target, and they're what do you call them? Shit, I can't think of the word.
Opportunists.
Opportunists. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. They're opportunists, right? They're the exception, not the rule, right? Yeah. But people's perceptions are built on the exceptions.
Yeah. So it's totally true. Yeah. That's I think you're right though. I mean, I think this time it seems different. I hope it is. I mean, it's like sometimes, I don't like to say this, but like, yeah, sometimes really bad shit needs to happen to wake people up. That's just kind of how we are. Like, we get complacent. We get, there could have been so many more instances and incidents that triggered a response that is effectual in putting in real change. Yeah. And it, for one reason or another, it didn't happen. And I mean, the cynic in me is like, damn, no, some more shit's going to keep happening. But I mean, I have hope like you that it does change.
Yeah.
It's not right. And I don't experience like you, I know my people did back in the day, like Sicilians.
Yep.
Even Sicilians got lynched under Jim Crow shit. But
Yes, they did.
I don't experience that on the daily like you. I don't have to talk to my 5 black kids, like, you know, because that makes it more real. So I could just imagine the anger, and, you know, it's like, fuck this. Things are going to change one way or another at this point, and I hope it does.
Now, I'll say one last controversial thing, right? And
You could bring all the controversy you want here, man.
And it's this, right? That contrary to popular belief, black people didn't create this problem. You know, this goes back to bringing slaves, you know, into the country. This goes back to not enfranchising freed slaves after they have been freed, and it goes back to disenfranchisement of blacks during Jim Crow. These are all situations that the power brokers created. Now, and you know, and I'm very careful about this because, like I say, that this is really a problem that white people need to fix, but it's not. I'm not going to say that this is a problem that all white people need to fix, but people who are in power, people who have influence, people who control money, people who have political power, that these are the people that they need to step up and say, okay, what can we do to keep these things from happening? Because this is what's going to happen is that if this keeps happening, eventually there's going to be civil war, and it's inevitable, right? If without any change, civil war is inevitable, because you know, black people are not just going to take this forever. The incidents that trigger these things are now widespread. We have smartphones and the internet, and so now, you know, there's a quote that's going around that says that Will Smith says that the racism isn't getting worse; it's just being filmed.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah,
and that's where we are. People, there's more visibility of these things now. As this increases, people are going to see it, and people are going to be outraged. And here's the thing: that when the Civil War happens, it's not just going to be blacks uprising against whites. It's not going to be that simple. What you're going to have is you're going to have a lot of class warfare, and then you're going to have like a lot of race warfare. And the racial warfare will happen with blacks being allied with sympathetic whites, and how that breaks out politically, I really couldn't tell you, but there has to be meaningful police reform. I mean, we need to look at how police departments were formed, how did they happen, and say, okay, this is how they came about. These are the things that were wrong about it, and fix these things. And then we have to do a little bit of checking and vetting. I tell people all the time, if what you believe can't withstand a Google search, it isn't worth believing. You know, people believe all these crazy conspiracy theories. And I said, shit, if you just go out and Google that and look for the actual research on it, you'll find most of what you believe to be true is bullshit. Now, so the thing is that when we're talking about police officers, we need to do a better job of vetting these people.
Yeah.
Because I know a couple of guys that were cops that they were once the playground bully. Mm-hmm. Now, I understand people change, yeah, but you know what? I also believe that by the time you're like 12 years old, you're pretty well baked, right? You know, you are who you are, and any change in that is going to be incremental. It's not going to be drastic. So, you know, if you find out somebody's been a playground bully, I ain't got no business with a badge and a gun. Sorry, but no. You know, if you have a history of race baiting or racial discrimination, you know, there's an FBI report that says that literally every police department in this country has been infiltrated with white supremacists. Every single one.
That's shocking, man.
It is. And now here's the thing. The good news is that there's not a lot of these guys. The bad news is that you get one in there, he's going to start reproducing. And their reproduction rate is fairly slow in terms of, the social mechanisms. And that's a good thing. But that's what happens. And so, and especially when one of these guys gets to be empowered, where he's like a patrol chief, a shift captain, or a precinct captain or something like that, then it's really bad because the guys do things, and this guy's going to gloss over it. He's going to hide it.
Yeah.
And then I also think that we need to have more women in policing. I just think the women are a little bit more empathetic than guys are. And and until we kind of grow up spiritually, maybe we ought to have some more women in this. And then when there's a police officer in Little Rock, Arkansas, it's a white guy, and he got famous because some neighbors called about these black kids. They have their basketball hoop set up in the cul-de-sac where they live, and people were complaining, right? So this cop comes out there, and he sees a bunch of kids playing basketball. So you know what he does? He says, well, I'll bet you a candy bar I can beat you in 21. And he gets out there and he hoops with the kids. And then the next thing you know, he's got a whole crew of cops coming out here that they take turns playing with these kids. And so now the kids are seeing that, hey, these cops are human. They're not bad guys. They're just like us. They have a different responsibility. And when you start doing that, effective community policing, effective community outreach, and things like that. And then criminal justice reform. First of all, let's legalize all the fucking drugs. I mean, honestly, because basically the whole drug thing
that's racist. That's racist as shit.
It's racist. The whole history of how marijuana and cocaine and heroin have been, controlled is racist. But the thing is that if people get high, they're not hurting anybody but themselves. I mean, it's like people drink and drive. People don't shoot up heroin and drive. That doesn't happen much. So, legalize drugs, get rid of all the nonviolent offenses and all of that, deal with the hardened criminals, people that kill people, people that rape people, people that molest children. Yes, let's deal with those in a more in a less nuanced way.
Well, just imagine how much emphasis can be put on those things if we removed the fighting this stupid frivolous drug war, or like nonviolent offenders, locking them up. Imagine how much time and effort could be put into what if every cop had to learn black culture? Learned about this shit, like did community policing, like you said, like learn about the place you're communicate. You have these events. All these resources that we're pouring into, busting people for drugs. It could be spent in such a better way that we would have better policing.
Yeah, absolutely. And then minority outreach in the minority community. Let's get more minority cops on the force.
Yes.
That's another thing. But there's a lot to that. That's a big hurdle.
Yeah.
But I really believe that, again, if we have community policing, if we have reasonable standards of applying laws for nonviolent offenses and things like that, I think that a lot of that would make this go away. And then the other thing is that we have to really start looking at, okay, are we profiling people because of something? Like I have a friend here. He's a parent of one of my kids' friends, and if you look at this guy, he looks like your typical skinhead. Mm-hmm. He's a big white guy. Really, you can tell he's been in the gym. He's got a shaved head. You know, he's got squinty eyes and all. He's got all. And if you were to look at this guy in the street, you'd look at that and say, oh, look at that fucking Nazi, right? That would be what would go through your mind, but he's like the nicest guy. So the thing is, we can't lump people into categories and just say, you know, all these people are this. Because I don't say all cops are bad.
Yeah.
I won't say that. What I will say, and I'm on the record saying this, and I don't care, all police departments are bad. All of them. Now, there are some that are less bad than others, but they're all bad because they trace their lineage, their roots back to something evil.
Yeah.
So if we start fixing these things, you know, maybe we'll see some change. But the one thing that I think is really awesome, you know, and I appreciate people who I've met on social media that I haven't met in person, like you and Keith, Todd, Katie. I really appreciate you guys because you don't owe me anything. You know,
yeah.
you don't owe me anything, but it's like the love that you guys have extended to me, the empathy and compassion that you've extended to me. Carl and Laura Forehand, oh my God, two of the most awesome people in the world. You know, they're reaching out to me like on a daily basis. They're like, Derrick, are you okay, man? Are you okay? Because they're like, hey, I know you've got to be going through it right now. And I appreciate that. But, you know, there's still the people that say, well, you know, if he had just complied, well, if he hadn't been trying to do this, or if he hadn't been trying to do that, or if he didn't look like, and as long as we have those people, which there are a lot of them, and a lot of them were like Facebook friends that, you know, and you know, it's like the whole thing with Kaepernick, Colin Kaepernick, and taking a knee during the national anthem. You know what? I'm going to say this. Now, I sit during the national anthem. I haven't stood for the national anthem since Kaepernick took a knee because I was showing my solidarity for him. And basically, I said until they let him back in the NFL, fuck the anthem. I'm never going to stand again. And I'm ex-military, man. I'm 7 years Navy with an honorable discharge. You know, and I, you know, I fought to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. You know, so saying that offends veterans, that no, that's not true. All that offends are people who don't want to deal with the fact that there is a problem with police and black people. And it's not a problem that black people cause. So as long as that persists, so, you know, and as long as people keep saying that, and what I've been doing basically now is I'm watching folks, and those folks who I've talked to, that I've had dialogue with, and that they still don't show empathy and compassion, I put distance between me and them. Not my tribe.
Yeah.
I'm committed to loving everyone, but loving everyone sometimes means that I'm far enough away from you that I don't lop your fucking head off.
Right. No, true. True. Yeah.
Love from a distance is still love, man.
Yeah. And sometimes that's the way it's got to be. That's the most loving thing to do almost. Because I'm about to slap someone, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I feel you, man. But thank you so much for doing this. And I'm sure I have some people who are listening who are good people to be in your tribe. And I just, you know, feel for you, feel for Kyle, feel for other people. My friend Tony tried to reach out, you know, just, yeah, things got to change, man. And, you know, as long as it's not fixed, there's always work to do, I guess. And so I just hope more people can at least be more attentive, paying attention, talking less, listening to more black folks.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
you know, people won't speak out against something that's a bane to others, that's a boon to themselves.
Yeah.
You know, in other words, if this is working for me, I really don't care if it hurts you. And unfortunately, that's a lot of the American groupthink.
Yeah.
And so we have to have that we have to have a change of heart. And so I really believe that, things like Heretic Happy Hour and, Too Many Podcasters and all of these different things where people are getting together and they're vetting things, difficult topics in the air of social media. I think that's a good thing. And again, I want to tell you, my brother, I love you. I mean, I love you with my whole heart. I love you. You are awesome. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for reaching out to me and asking me to do this. And dude, I believe in you that I have a brother for life.
Yeah.
So
I appreciate that. I love you too, Derrick, and stay safe. We'll be checking in with each other, I'm sure. And appreciate it. Where can people follow you? Because Patreon supporters are notorious for being engaged. So
well, cool. Well, get engaged, man. All of Matthew's Patreon supporters, I would love to hear from you guys. You can reach me on my website. It's www.derrickday.com, and there's a link called Contact. Click that link. There's a form you can fill out, and it'll send me an email. And I promise that anybody that sends me an email, good, bad, or indifferent, I'm going to respond. That's number one. Number two, you can hit me up on Instagram or Twitter. My handle on both of them is Derrick E. Day. That's DerrickEday. On Facebook, you can reach me at Derrick Day Multimedia. That's my page, and you can hang out with me there. And also the Love Forward podcast, which I was going to do a new episode this week, but my work schedule has just been insane. But when you asked me to do this, I said I'll make time for that. But the Love Forward podcast is on iTunes, it's on Podbean, it's on Spotify, it's on everywhere you can find podcasts. And last but not least, you can catch me on Pathos, and my blog there is called Love Minus Religion. And it's really cool because it's like sort of Christy, but not Bible-y.
Is that the tagline, Christy but not Bible-y?
I need to tag that, man. That's actually good.
Yeah, that would be good.
Oh,
well,
one more quick thing.
Absolutely.
Because June 5th to the 7th, I'm going to be one of the speakers in a conference called Nomad 2020. And we're going to have like an awesome list of speakers. We've talked about Keith Giles. We've talked about Kyle Butler. We talked about Katie Valentine. Carla Laura Forehand talked about them. Todd Vick, Bill Thrasher, Jason Elam, all really awesome people. PK Langley, Cody and Elaine Johnson. It's going to be a really good time. People are going to speak from their hearts and not with the same old religious song and dance bullshit that you've heard all your life. It's going to be something new, fresh, and refreshing, because not everyone who wanders is lost.
Yes, that's the tagline. Where can people get? Is it tickets, or how do people?
The tickets for the conference are $39, and you can get them on Nomad 2020. That's NOMAD 2020.HeySummit. That's HeySummit.com. And if you go out there, you can get registered and all of that. And if you're registering, mention that I told you to register. Put my name in there so that I get extra credit.
Nice. Yeah, I'll put a link here. I'll put a link to your sites, Derrick, and I'll put a link to that conference so people can check that out. So please do that. Thanks for listening, Derrick. Thank you so much. Love you, brother.
Matthew's book, Heretic.
Yeah, they already got it. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I'm telling them if they're supporting you on Patreon, but they haven't bought that book, buy the fucking book. It's excellent. It changed my life.
Well, good. I'm glad. I wish I would. Okay, I'm going to do a second edition now, and on the top, it's just going to be, you're going to be the only endorsement. Buy the fucking book.
Yeah, that's it, man.
All right.
Bye. All right, man. Peace.